Doesn't know what I'm doing right now, which is great because that's important. You guys need to know that he doesn't know what I'm doing right now. So I need Levi up here. And there's a reason I'm picking Levi for this. You'll see. So I have two cups here. Here, face that way. I have two cups here. And I have a bottle of water from my car. This has been sitting in my car since Camp Andrews. So this is frozen. I mean, it's really cold. It's not frozen, it's liquid, but it is really cold. No. So what I'm going to do is we're going to play kind of a Simon Says. But I want to, and you got to do what I tell you exactly. Okay? So if I say wiggle your hand, you can't dance around. You need to wiggle your hand. All right? So we're going to do it exactly as I say. Now my question is, do you trust me? Okay. So he said he trusts me. Now let me ask you. Hold on. Let me ask you this: if there was a guy on the street you never saw before, and he said, hey, I want you to hold these red cups. I got some liquid in here. I want you to do exactly what I say. Would you do it? Why? Okay. That's important. Just remember that, okay? So put your hands out in front of you. Now you're going to hold these cups up above your eye level. So people are going to, see that up here. Can't do anything with the cups. You're just going to hold them there until I tell you to do something else. Pay attention. Now remember, this water is awesome and cold. Alright, so the first thing we're going to do, I'm going to take one of those cups from you. I'll take this one. And I want you to take the cup from forward, and you're going to put it on your head. You're going to close your eyes, and you can watch me. No, hold the cup. Wow, see? Now paying attention. Pay attention. Now you're gonna wait. Watch what I do so you can see. I'm going to spin around slowly, okay? With my eyes closed, with your eyes closed, that's what you're gonna do. Doesn't matter which way you go. When I say go, all right? So remember, close your eyes and spin around slowly. Okay? Go ahead. All right, you can stop. All right, you ready? Now bring it from the top of your head back in front of you. Now this one's important. Do you trust me? On the count of 3, we are going to pick this cup up, and we're going to pour it on our head, your own head. You can't miss. You have to pour it directly over your head slowly. 1, 2, 3. Thank you. So the point of that was, Levi knows me, right? He knows me, lives with me, he talks to me, he knows all about me, he's learned about me. So he knows I might pour water on his head, but I'm doing a lesson here, so in good nature, I wouldn't do something that's gonna, hurt him or cause too much anger in him. But if he saw somebody on the street, somebody he didn't know, he doesn't even know what's in that bottle, let alone whether the guy's going to pour some water on his head. So that's important. And the whole point of this is when we talk to God, when we have a relationship with God, let's say we have accepted God. We talk to him and we pray, we worship, and we read. We get to know God. So then when things start happening, if you truly believe that God controls, he's in charge, he knows what's happening, and he's looking out for you, then that fear that comes along with a rough situation, with a storm of life, can be lessened because we have our anchor in Jesus. You see what I'm saying? So Levi knows that I'm probably not going to completely make a fool out of him up here, but he doesn't know that a guy on the street isn't out to get him. So if some guy tried to get him to do that, chances are he's going to be like, sorry, I gotta go. But with me, he was willing to do it. He even took the risk. He didn't even hesitate. I was actually surprised he went for it. And remember, that water is really cold. So that was really good. And so that's how we need to be with God. Once we accept God, we need to learn about God. We need to talk to him, because without that communication, without learning about who he is, then we never get to know him. So he could essentially be a guy on the street. And so when something bad happens, we start questioning him. And that is not what God wants us to do. So, I have a question for you guys, and I want you guys to raise your hands. It's going to be interactive, so I want you guys to, answer my questions, not verbally. Just raise your hand if it's a yes. And the question is, do you ever know anybody that was super stubborn? We'll start with that. Anybody know anybody that's super stubborn? Stubborn means like they just think they're always right. It can be yourself. That's okay. Now, do you know anybody who was super stubborn and they were atheist? And they were super stubborn about being atheist? Okay, we got a couple hands in the air. Atheist means they don't believe in God. They don't believe in any God. All right. So, now, the question to them would be, why are they an atheist? And they probably have a lot of answers, but I'm going to tell you why I was that guy. When I was right below your guys' age, all the way up to, say, 16, I did not believe in God. I was actually kind of mean to people who did believe in God. And I'm going to tell you a bit of my story. Not the whole story. Many of you probably already know that. This is just to give you the groundwork of my thing. So I thought I knew everything because, I'm still stubborn. But I was a stubborn atheist. So if you were a Christian, I was ready to go. And so here's why. Let me give you some background of why I didn't believe in God. I grew up in a rough home. And when I say rough, my parents drank a lot. And there may have been other stuff involved. My dad was physically abusive to me. So every day, there wasn't much excitement, there wasn't much happiness in my house. And in school was actually okay for me because I got away from my house. It felt dangerous at my house. Like something bad was going to happen every day. So when I got to go to school, it was good. And I had a friend there, his name was Michael. And Michael grew up in almost an identical house. He had an abusive dad. His dad actually sold drugs. And there was all kinds of crazy stuff going on in his house. So when I met Michael, we connected right away because we had that same background. He kind of figured out my situation and I figured out his. And so we made a plan. Now this was elementary school. We went all the way up into high school. And the game plan was when we were 17, just about 18, we were going to go into the Marines. Because if you go into the military, you get to get away. You get to get away. You have to do a job, but you have housing. They're going to pay for you. You can go to school. You have a lot of options, and you don't have to rely on anything back home. So that was my plan: get away. And so Mike wanted to do the same thing, and so we went. When we were 17, just about 18, a couple months before we were 18, we went into the Marine recruiter at the mall, and he sat down. And one thing about recruiters, if you know them, if you've ever met one, they're really, really good at making you excited about it. So they went up there and they're telling us, it's going to be so awesome. You're going to be huge. You're going to be, giant muscles. You're going to be the coolest guy ever. All this stuff. We just got super excited. And we went through. He's asking us questions, making sure we, met all the requirements. Everything was great. And one thing about that, the reason that Michael and I went together, this is important. The Marines offered an option. They called it the buddy system. And the buddy system allowed him and I to go in together. And now remember, Michael's my best friend, so that was awesome. We would go into training together, and as long as we both succeeded at training, we would then, as long as we picked jobs that worked together, we would potentially be deployed together. If we went overseas to a war situation, we would go together. Which was cool because if you're going into a situation like that, it's kind of scary if you don't have anybody that you know. So we went in, again, we were talking to the recruiter, right? And we signed our papers, we got all the way to the end. And right at the end, he asked a couple questions. And the first question was something along the lines of, I just want to make sure that you guys are 100% good. Neither of you guys have AIDS, right? And I looked at Mike, I'm like, I don't have AIDS. And he's like, neither do I, we're good. And we kind of laughed about it. And then he's like, all right, just one question left. One question. The only question that can stop me from going into the Marines. Are you an insulin-dependent type 1 diabetic? That's exactly what I am. About 2 months earlier, I was diagnosed with insulin-dependent type 1 diabetes. And I have to have insulin to survive. If I didn't have my insulin, I would die. And he explained to me that no military can accept you with a requirement like that because if you're overseas and your medicine gets lost or something, I die, the government gets blamed. And they don't want that liability. So he stopped it. He took my paperwork and he said, I'm sorry, you can't go. And so essentially sending me back into the crazy chaos. Now, what you have to understand is at this stage of my life, I was sitting in these seats. I was becoming a Christian. I actually was a Christian at this point. And everybody's like, oh man, it's going to be so great. We know you had some rough stuff, but God's got you, this plan, And my assumption was that this was the plan, to get away from it. So here I am, sitting there, and I get denied. And the first thing that I think of is, really, God? You're going to tell me that I had to deal with this for like 16, 17 years, and now I have to go back to it? I don't get to get away? So let me tell you what happened after that. I was really frustrated. My friend went back to school. He didn't sign his papers because he didn't want to go in alone. He went in and grabbed another one of his friends, a good friend of his. They went back the next day, signed the papers, and before I knew it, they were off. They went to training. I was not able to go. I continued coming here. I didn't know what to believe. It really shook me because I'm like, God's got a plan, right? How can his plan be good if it's going to put me in a situation where I'm going to get hit, screamed at, called names, everything? Like, it's really bad. And I just didn't understand. So, I continued on. And I wanted to tell you that story because we come in, things happen in our lives. People often refer to them as storms in your life, right? Like there's a storm, it's just crazy right now, bad things are happening. To me, that was a major storm. It was bad for me. It was rough. I didn't know what to do. I didn't know who to turn on. My faith wasn't super strong at that point. Because my faith was strong, I probably would have prayed about it, but I didn't. I didn't know what to do. So I kind of didn't do anything with my life. I just worked a basic job. I actually worked at McDonald's. And I took classes for school, but it wasn't what I wanted to do. I was just doing it because that's what everybody else did. I didn't have direction. And so I want to tell you a story from the Bible that it's interesting, and it kind of aligns with the same thing. So let me explain. Let me give you a little background. Jesus was with his disciples. Now, his disciples are like his students, the people that are studying under him, right? So they were on the edge of the Sea of Galilee. Now, it's not important much about that, except that to get to the other side of the Sea of Galilee, it's 8 miles. Now, in today's standards, that's a quick, boat, high speed, get across. But back then, they had fishing boats. And the fishing boats used sails. And the sails for the fishing boats, if the wind takes you, it takes you. So 8 miles could take hours. And it did. So they're sitting there on the edge of the Sea of Galilee, and one of the fishermen, who was one of the disciples, had his boat there, and Jesus was talking to them. And one cool thing about God is that when he talks, people come. When you speak God's word, people come. So a crowd started forming, and it got bigger and bigger, and it got to a point where Jesus was like, all right, guys, we got to get out of here. This is getting too crazy. So he's like, why don't we take the boat to the other side of the Sea of Galilee? So, now remember, it would take a couple hours. So, let me ask you this. If you were there, raise your hand if you were one of the disciples and Jesus was there. Now, keep in mind that you have seen Jesus raise people from the dead. You've seen him heal people. Like, hey, he can't see, touches your eyes, and now you're walking around seeing perfectly fine. Like, Jesus is doing impossible things. Now, Jesus is getting onto the boat with you, and you're going across a sea that you have been on all the time. That's what you do. You're a fisherman. You take your boat out there. So you have Jesus with, and you know how to, use your boat to get across. Who would feel confident that this is going to be easy? This is easy. We got Jesus with us, right? I mean, nothing bad's going to happen. Nobody would feel confident. I'll tell you what, I would be confident. Jesus, come on. He can do whatever he wants. He made the world. How could the sea cause problems? So, here's the verse, and this is in Mark. And this story is so cool. So, I'm going to read it from my paper because my computer is being a punk. Mark chapter 4. But soon a fierce storm came up. High waves were crashing, breaking into the boat, and it began to fill with water. Jesus was sleeping at the back of the boat on a cushion, So he wasn't just sleeping, he had a pillow. He was snuggled up in the back. The disciples woke him up. So remember, there's, say 12 guys that were on the boat with him, and they were losing their mind. Their ship. Now remember, this is one of their ships, and it's pretty much how they make their money, how they get their food. Their ship is filling with water, and they can't do anything about it. So they start screaming, and they yell at Jesus, and they say, "Teacher, don't you care that we're going to drown?" They literally said to God, "Don't you care that we're going to die in the water?" So here's an example of how God's ridiculous in a good way. When Jesus woke up, so he obviously woke up from them yelling at him, he rebuked the wind and said to the waves, "Silence, be still." And the wind and the waves stopped and just fell. The boat that was about to sink sat still. The water across the Sea of Galilee was flat. He literally used his words and immediately took that storm and made it disappear. Now what's interesting is, he asked them, "Why are you afraid? Do you still have no faith?" Now that question, "Do you still have no faith?" is big to me. And I'm going to tell you why. Because if you know anything about me, you know that crazy stuff has happened in my life when I called on God. It kind of seems like every time anything bad happens to me, I get like the disciples did, and I start screaming and freaking out, and then next thing you know, I'm asking on God, like, "Don't you care about me?" And then miraculous things happen. Things that shouldn't happen. Just like he did for them. Now the disciples' response was interesting too. Now remember, they were scared. They were screaming, they were losing their mind. And they said to each other, "Who is this man? Even the wind and the waves obey him." So at this point, it was like a wake-up moment for them, because I don't know how they would think that it's okay for him to, wipe away blindness or make crippled people walk, but he couldn't, make waves stop, but that's what happened. So, if you look at that whole situation, the disciples trusted Jesus with their boat and expected nothing to go wrong because, hey, once you got God with you, everything's going to be good, right? Like, that's what I would think, right? You got somebody that can control anything. And then a storm came. And that's kind of like how it is for us, right? You got Jesus and then something bad happens, and how do you handle that? So the way they acted, that's how we act. That's how I acted. When something bad happened, when this happened, when that whole military thing happened, I said, "Really? Like, God, you did this to me? You're gonna break me like that? Don't you care? Don't you care that pretty much my life is ruined, God?" So I'm going to tell you what happened then. A year and a half later, I get a call. A year and a half after my friend signed the papers to go into the Marines. And he called me. And he goes, "Hey, we're going to go out to lunch." And I was excited. I did not expect his name to pop up on my phone. So he came, and we went out to lunch. And, we were just talking. And, of course, I had to ask him, I'm like, "How did it go?" I was so jealous. I'm telling him this. I was so jealous. It was not fair. You don't understand the stuff I had to go through while I was back. And he goes, "Don't be jealous." And I said, "No, you know I have the right to be jealous," because he knew my story. And he's like, "No, seriously, don't be jealous." And he said it in a way that had stopped me. And I'm like, "What are you talking about?" He goes, "Why are you so mad?" And I said, "Well, I'm a Christian, and people are telling me there's a reason that I didn't get to go, and I didn't get to go. So I guess I'm being selfish, but I really wanted to get away from this." And he goes, "Let me tell you that there is a reason you didn't get to go." And he goes, "Remember my friend that went with me? They went through training together. They learned the same skill set. They took the same job, and they were deployed to Afghanistan together. On a normal patrol, they became under attack, and his friend shot and killed. And he said, there's a really good chance that would have been you." Now, he was a Christian, and he said, if you think God let you down, I think, meaning him, that God has a plan for you because he could have let you do what you want, and you would potentially be dead right now. But because he did what he wanted, and I didn't think it was right, I'm alive. I'm actually, I could go back and say, I didn't get to go to the Marines because I'm supposed to tell you guys this today. See, if that would have happened, if I would have went to the Marines, I wouldn't be here right now. So what does this mean? This means that when I was first becoming a Christian, I made one crucial mistake. I accepted God, but then I stopped. I still came here. I still listened to the sermons, kind of absorbed whatever. Maybe I came for the pizza, maybe I liked the girl, but I didn't really pursue God. Like, I didn't go home and pray. I didn't really do much. And so when things happened, I didn't understand why they happened. I didn't ask God why that happened. I didn't hear from God until a while later because I didn't actively pursue him. So what I'm trying to say is, when storms come in your life, if you keep that communication open, God reveals what's going on. And I say this now. You have to understand, I've changed a lot. So my life is directed at God now. So I do actively pursue God. And that change that I made, things don't mess me up anymore. I mean, sure, every once in a while I'll have a bad day or whatever, but depression, things like that, I know. I pray to God and he reveals, what's going on, and things work out. When I rely on God, he helps us. There are so many times, you can ask Amy if you're in her, group, things, God, we've prayed about things were rough, and we prayed about things and miraculous things happened because we were pursuing God and we were relying on God. So, with that said, I want to do something. Now, who wants to be bold for God? Who wants to live for God? What that means is, like, who wants to bring him into your daily life? I can see the kids that are nervous because they're like, what are you going to make me do? Sing a song? No, I'm not going to make you sing a song. I'm not going to make you do anything crazy. Nothing crazy. I won't pull what I did to Levi. Don't worry. My point is this. There's probably 3 types of people in this room right now. There are people who don't believe. I was in that place at one point. There are people who believe, but were where I was, where I believed and I stopped. I just came. I didn't sing during worship. I didn't really pray unless someone made me pray. And then there are the people who are actively seeking God. Here's my question to you. If you are a non-believer, the first step to step in, to bring Jesus into your life, is to ask him into your life. And so that's what we're going to do. We're going to have whoever wants to come forward, and we're gonna pray. I'll pray, and you guys can repeat after me. And for the people in the second category, if you accepted Jesus, but you really want to dig deeper, you want to include him more in your life, you can come up, and the prayer will apply to you. And the people in the third category, if you're actively seeking God, but maybe you feel like, I could do better, I want to do better, and you want to pray too, come up. Whoever wants to come up right now, I'm going to pray. I want anybody who is going to be bold today and say, I want to follow Jesus. I want to bring him more into my life than I already have. Just come up here and we'll pray together. I'm going to be up here. I'll put myself up here because you know what? I'm not perfect. So, is there anybody out there that wants to do this? You want to come up? Come on.
I can't let you be alone, man.
No, don't do it for me, man. This is for you. So go ahead and kneel right here, not at me. We're going to face the cross over there. This is for everyone that wants to. This is all about you and God. This is about giving your life to God and actively wanting to pursue him. Don't feel pressured to come up. I want you to come up because you truly feel that urge to follow Jesus. If you don't feel it, you're fine to sit down. No one's going to think anything about it. All right, and if you can't get up here, you can just pray where you're at. I'll let everybody sit down, and then we will pray. All right, here we go. Let's close our eyes. Jesus. Repeat after me. Jesus. I want to experience your grace today. I believe that you died on the cross to pay the price for my sins. I admit I'm a sinner in need of a Savior. And I'm inviting you to be mine right now. Come into my life. Forgive my sin. Guide me as I begin to follow you. Thank you, Jesus. Amen. I want to say that anybody that came up for the first time, I want you to let your leaders know. Nothing crazy is going to happen, but Dan has some information for you that's super important. It's going to help you move to the next stage. So it's nothing, it's just a couple papers that are going to give you some information. I wish I had those papers when I first accepted, because maybe I would have, not waited years to take that next step. So my advice to you is run to Dan. And definitely share your story with your small group. And now we're going to break for small groups.